Congratulations on the film.
Thank you very much.
Have you seen it?
I saw it. I saw it without music, and I saw it without some of the effects finished and everything. So I'll see it in a couple of days.
Cool.
Yeah.
But what do you think so far?
It's just the sort of film I've always wanted to be in. You know, it's the sort of film that I've always wanted to watch, that I seek out all the time. So to be in one of them is amazing.
In what way? What is it about it that, you know, as an audience member, that you like then?
It's just so gripping. I mean, Alex, who wrote and directed it, obviously, is he's just he might be my favorite. You know, like I think he's. There goes my phone. Alex is my favorite, basically. So it's just so gripping from second to second. It's so interesting, and it just keeps on changing what you think as it goes on. You keep on thinking, I understand what's happening with these people, and you absolutely don't. And it just grabs you in, and there's no let up. It's exactly the sort of film I love. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's very cool.
It really is. Let's start at the beginning. Talk about Caleb, who you play. Describe him for us.
He is a coder. He works for an internet search engine, kind of the biggest one in the world. So an equivalent of one that we are all aware of. But he's a sort of a normal guy, pretty secluded, and very just into his work, it feels like. And then he wins this lottery to spend a week with the owner of the company, who's a genius. So he goes out to be with him, and with no idea of what to expect, and is thrown into the middle of this madness where he doesn't know exactly what's going on from second to second, and things keep on changing around him. So I don't know if he's a fish out of water in it, but he's in over his head pretty quick, and he's trying to understand his situation as it goes on. And I think he's a pretty normal guy, I think, but in really exceptional circumstances.
Now Oscar plays Nathan, the billionaire kind of recluse. That owns this amazing place where he goes.
Yeah.
And when your character is there, he meets Ava, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Tell us about her.
Ava is the most incredible thing that man has invented, which is another consciousness. So that's never happened before. So the test is, he's brought, the guise is to see whether she's conscious or not, I suppose. That's Caleb's job that he's put to. But pretty quickly he starts seeing her as a human, almost, even though it's so clear that she's not. I mean, you can see the way she works. You can see her face is the face of a human, but everything around her is so clearly robotic. But she's beautiful. There's a purity to her, and there's she's just special in so many different ways, and exceptional in so many different ways. So he's fascinated by her in every way, I think, as a robot, as a human, as a consciousness, and as a woman, which obviously complicates things further.
Nathan asked him to carry out what's known as the Turing test, isn't it? Could you explain that for us? Because
the Turing test, as is put in the film, I think pretty early on, so everybody knows what's going on. The Turing test is normally done differently. The Turing test is normally a person and then a tester, and then they're in a room by themselves. And normally it's just done by tapping into a computer and then getting replies, asking questions of somebody or of a computer on the other side of the wall. You're allowed to ask questions for a certain amount of time. They give you answers, and at the end of it, you're supposed to guess whether it's a human or a computer giving you these responses. And it's never been passed, really. And so that's the way it's normally done. You don't know what's on the other side of the curtain. But in this one is different. This Turing test is different. The rules are different, because he's able to see what's in front of him, and he's able to see that it is a robot. So the Turing test is tweaked in that he has to try and understand or decide for himself whether he thinks there's a consciousness in there. And so that's how the Turing test is different in this one.
Okay.
And obviously the repercussions of a machine having a real mind and real feelings as well, all that stuff that goes with being conscious, is it's very complicated and it's very difficult. But she's so clearly present. She's got a sense of humour. She's got a sense of decency, of right and wrong, all these things which computers don't have. And so things escalate very quickly in terms of what it means to keep somebody locked up, if it is a person or if it is conscious. You know, how okay it is to keep something like that locked up.
So the film is dealing with some very big themes here, and some very topical themes. I mean, I'm sure you saw Professor Stephen Hawking's comments about AI and how if we do develop it, it will quickly advance to the point where we become kind of redundant.
Where we can't control it.
Where we can't control it. What were your thoughts on it going in, and did it change during the process of making the film?
I think it changes all the time, because there's always this doomsday scenario which is put on the notion of true artificial intelligence, which is if we can't control it, then we shouldn't create it, because you shouldn't create something you can't control. But really, I think what the part of the film is about evolution, which is if you create something which is superior, then should you control it? Maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should create it and then let it do its own thing, if it is in fact superior. But as a human, you want control. Everybody wants control over themselves, and to a certain extent over other people too, whether you like to admit it or not. So the balance of that shifts all the time during the film, and while we were filming it, the balance of it shifted all the time in my head too. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Of course, because the notion of something being a threat, you never want to create a threat. But if it's superior, then it's superior, and maybe it's supposed to be a threat, you know? Like those things add up all the time and kind of hit into each other quite hard. And especially if you're right at the centre of it, of deciding whether it should be allowed to exist or not. I actually don't know still where I stand on it.
Because Alex has a very clear view. And I'm sure you've spoken to him about this. So, you know, it is the natural next step, and he believes it will happen within, he said to me, within his lifetime. Do you think we're that close?
Well, I mean, I'm not qualified to know that, because I don't actually code and I don't actually create those sort of, you know, I barely passed maths at school, so I'm the last person to know. But is it Kurzweil, that guy Kurzweil? He thinks it'll he's come out with a date of when he thinks it'll happen, or a year when he thinks it will happen, and he seems to think of it as a positive thing. But it is, you know, I know so little about the reality of it that I'm not sure. The singularity, the moment of singularity, you know, I don't know. I've no clue. No clue.
Did you have to do some research to play this character? You said, you know, maths at school level maths, I would imagine. I mean, you know, we all use these computers and phones, smartphones and things like that. Most of us have no idea how they work.
No, and while we were filming, all that stuff came out about people's search histories being forever, you know, and the way, you know, Google, I don't know when I say Google, but you know the way your search results are based on your previous search results, and it creates a personality of you, basically, and then feeds it back to you. You know, so when you search for something, it will take into account everything else you've previously searched or clicked on and everything. It will present you with those things with your favorites at the top of what it thinks will be your favorites. So actually, it's not just its own, it doesn't just govern itself, it creates a version of you every time you search for something. Those things are really terrifying, but also really handy if you write in the name of, you know, a local Indian restaurant. If you write in just the name of the restaurant, it'll come up with your local restaurant as opposed to some place in India. You know, so it's handy. You know? But you don't know how much control you've given over. So it's, it's complicated, and I guess I've no idea. I've no idea where I am and all that sort of. Alex is so much more clear on that stuff than I am. You know,
he's very clear on that. Let's talk about Alex, because you've worked together before, of course. You've known each other for a few years, haven't you?
Which is brilliant.
Had he talked to you? Because again, he was telling me that this is a project that he's been thinking about for a number of years. Had you guys talked about it maybe before, or?
No, I'd never talked to Alex about it before. it's fun. I mean, these are the stories you tell when you talk about something too much, maybe. But I got an email from Alex. We hadn't been in touch a lot. I had done Dread with him and Never Let Me Go, which I was very proud to be in those two films. And then I got an email from him saying, I've got something you may be interested in, and sent to this and said, do you want to talk about it? Sent me the script. Adored the script.
Read it in one go. And
I was doing a different job. I probably shouldn't have been reading other projects, and I thought I'll read it's Alex, so you can't not read it. Yeah, no, and then you're just all night, reading it a couple of times. And then I did get invited over to his house. I went over to do the audition tape because he said he wanted me to do it, but you have to get people to, all that stuff. And so in a way it was like Caleb going over to Nathan's, I think, this person who you really admire, who is at the very top of what they do, of the thing that you do, who's at the very top, and inviting you over. And it was kind of like winning that lottery, going over and not knowing what you're letting yourself in for. And everything was in the script. We talked plenty about it because the ideas are so huge.
Yeah.
But my everything I owe is to the character, and to the film, and that was just so clear on the page. Once you get to the end of what you have to put into the beginning, I thought it was amazing, and so I was just dying to be a part of it, basically.
Did you, when you first worked with him, a few years ago, did you know then that he would direct himself? Did you think, he's going to direct at some point?
I thought he should. I didn't know if he would.
Right.
It was very clear to me that he was more than not just capable, but he has a gift with writing, and he's able to shepherd that so clearly and get the best out of everybody on a film set. So, and not easily, I'm sure it's difficult, but he gets the best out of everybody at what they do. I think on this film in particular, I think every department, I would be surprised if anybody wouldn't put this film at the top of what they've done, and that's across the board, from makeup to CG to the photography to everybody. So it was clear to me that he was a lot more than capable, and I hoped he would. Mm-hmm. And then when he did, I was lucky enough that he asked me to be involved. So it was a perfect scenario for me, really.
And you had a rehearsal period, I believe. Was that rehearsal period, was that important in kind of working out those dynamics between the three characters and how that plays? Because it is very much a three-piece. I know there are two other characters that we see, but you guys you carried the weight of the movie.
Yes, I think that's fair to say, yeah. The rehearsal period, the rehearsal period was pretty straightforward.
Right.
Like I say, when the script is that good, if you give everything to it, and everybody cares, which everybody did, then I think it's difficult to really mess it up if everyone's honest and everyone is talented. And Oscar and Alicia are obviously incredibly talented, and Alex was so clear about what it needed to be that we zipped through it pretty quickly. And the levels revealed themselves, of course, but I think we all knew it was going to be there. So building up those relationships, I already had a relationship with Alicia. I'd worked with her previously and thought she was a wonderful...
That was on Anna Karenina, of course, wasn't it?
Yes.
Well, you were man and wife, I believe, weren't you?
That's right, yeah. And we'd worked very well on that, I felt. Like we really had a strong connection with the work and with each other and how to get the best out of each other. So I felt like we were in solid ground there, even though this relationship is so different.
Yeah.
And then Oscar is a completely different sort of being, and we had our own way of working that through too. So really it's about finding out each other's processes. I already knew Alicia's, finding out Oscar's process sounds like such a actory word, but the way people work, just finding out the way it works, so how to work with somebody. That was really what it felt to me that the rehearsal period was about, I think.
And working with Oscar, he's wonderful in this, you all are.
Yeah. He's fantastic.
Was that... Because in a way, your character is the audience. We enter the world through you, don't we?
Yeah.
And we meet them both mainly through you.
Yes. Yeah.
And you had that relationship with Alicia, but Oscar was a new guy for you, I presume.
Yes, yeah. I'd seen him in Llewyn Davis and stuff. Yes, yeah. He was fantastic. He brought a certain amount of the certainty that Nathan has, and that kind of... the oddness of Nathan, I think Oscar carried it around a little bit sometimes when we were there, and I carried around a little bit of chaos. It's inevitable. It always happens a little bit. It bleeds in. And he's a very, very funny man, Oscar, you know, very fun to be around. But once and rehearsals were really good fun. Then once we got to filming, we still had a laugh and everything, but there was, I think, a certain amount of that battle, you know, in a really, really good way for the film that was going on, of you were never able to truly know what the other person was thinking, really.
Yeah.
You know, digging in was quite difficult because there's this veneer of, is he lying or is he telling the truth all the time? And I thought he did it brilliantly. He's fantastic in the film.
So did I. Was it intense? It looked...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found it very intense.
Yeah.
I found it very intense.
But rewarding as well, clearly.
The reward is in the film, you know,
Okay.
like there was a lot of fun on set, but it was, you know, it was an enclosed environment a lot of the time. We were in those small rooms, you know, you could feel the psychological pressure. They're long scenes that are very back and forth and wondering, and what the hell are you doing to me, and what am I doing to you, and all those sort of things. So there was a huge amount of intensity there, but it just meant it was fun to break out of it when you could then, you know. Alex was always popping over and telling me that if I did the next scene well enough that he would give me his watch. He would come over with his watch in his hand and say, "This could be yours if you really nail this next take." And I mean, it was a nice watch, but yeah. So there was, like, you know, we were laughing the whole time. Wonderful. But it was always about getting the scene. It was always about getting the scene because it was quite a quick shoot.